Filthy, absolute squalor, structurally unsafe, dangerous, widespread violence, inadequate medical care, and use of excessive force against inmates. What country or community in this country would be so base to subject its prisoners before trial, or even after trial, to those conditions? Answer, the Fulton County Jail in Georgia. And what DA would ever ask a judge to send anyone there subjected to those deplorable conditions? Answer, the Fulton County DA. And guess what? All the people in the Fulton County criminal justice system know all about this jail. It's not a secret. It is a disgrace and it's unconstitutional. And that's where the president, former President Donald Trump and 18 others will be booked any day. Those conditions, filthy, absolute squalor, structurally unsafe, dangerous, widespread violence, inadequate medical care, use of excessive force against inmates, is why the Fulton County Jail is currently under investigation by the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. The New York Times reports that in recent weeks, 2 inmates have been found dead in that jail. Last year, another detainee, according to his lawyer, was found dead. But get this, he was covered in bed bug bites. Attorney General Merrick Garland points out the obvious to everyone except apparently Fulton County, Georgia, and their leaders. He said, people in prisons and jails are entitled to basic protections of their civil rights. What the Attorney General didn't say and should have is that individuals housed in jails haven't even had their trials yet. They may be innocent, but we don't even do that to the guilty, the ones who go to prison after a trial. Under the Constitution, a concept lost on many these days is the presumption of innocence. It's hard to believe the Fulton County Jail and the county officials could ever let this happen. When you learn all that's happening behind their locked doors, you're going to be sick. And you know the conditions have to be really bad to be investigated by the feds for civil rights violations. Now, Trump and his other high-profile co-defendants like Mayor Rudy Giuliani, former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, they're expected to surrender to this jail by noon next Friday. Yes, of course, these 18 defendants won't be there long. They're not even going to spend the night. They're going to make bail. You can count on that. And believe it or not, though, there's a silver lining to their being subjected to these deplorable conditions in that county jail. Because of the high-profile nature of Trump and his co-defendants, a giant spotlight is now on Fulton County Jail and the DA, Fani Willis, who asks judge, lock people up in that jail. Look, I don't like crime, and it's spiking here in D.C., but no jail, no county, no DA has the right to violate constitutional rights and subject people big and small, innocent, guilty, rich and poor, to such deplorable conditions. And of course, adding to this, the whole world is watching. They see this. And the next time we tell other countries about their prisons and their jails, they're going to hit back with 3 words, Fulton County Jail. This is the record. Next week's surrender of the 19 Georgia co-defendants comes as the DA, Fani Willis, comes under scrutiny by a Republican. He is a Georgia State Senator, and he wants to impeach the Fulton County DA. Georgia State Senator Colton Moore is demanding an emergency session. The purpose, to review Willis's actions. He tweeted, quote, in part, America's under attack. I'm not going to sit back and watch as radical left prosecutors politically target political opponents. Former federal prosecutor and former assistant DA in Cobb County, Georgia, Francey Hakes joins me. And Francey, just on the outgoes, is I don't think she should be impeached. Let the voters decide what to do. So I don't know if that's going to go any place what he's doing, and maybe it's real, maybe it's a political stunt. But I want to talk about the Fulton County Jail. How do these deplorable conditions continue to exist, and how can anyone? How can the jailers, how can the sheriff, how can the county, how can the DA send anyone in good conscience to this jail, ever?
Well, they shouldn't be able to. I mean, I took it very personally, my responsibility for the people who were in custody. In other words, in jail, whether it was jail or prison, because we, the county, the state, the federal government, whoever it is, are responsible for their well-being while they are involuntary guests of the system. And here, The Fulton County Jail has long been a humiliating embarrassment and a place that you wouldn't want to spend an hour, Greta, much less an involuntary stay of weeks or months. And that's what's been going on during the pandemic. You've had hundreds and hundreds of prisoners who were charged with serious offenses, held without bail, and held without trial because of the emergency of the pandemic. And even since the pandemic has ended, you have people still in jail under these conditions, and for which you can lay blame right at the hands of the Fulton County Sheriff, the Fulton County District Attorney, and the Fulton County Commission, all of whom are responsible for funding and maintaining that jail.
You know, Francey, it so enraged me. I spent much of my career representing poor people who don't have a voice, and they oftentimes can't make bail, even for a simple thing where ordinarily everybody else could make bail. And you know, and the whole idea that they blame it on COVID. You know, I get it. You know, I get what COVID is, but there's no exception in the Constitution that says speedy trial. Oh, except for if you get COVID. But no one cared at all. And the whole idea, you know, how could any prosecutor stand up in court and say, sends that person on some minor offense because he can't make jail to that jail, knowing that you could get killed, you get bug bites, it's disgusting. Even the Department of Justice is appalled by it. You got to go pretty far to get the Department of Justice appalled at the conditions of a jail, and they know it. They know it. So, I mean, I'm glad that former President Trump is going to have to go there because it's going to put the spotlight on for everybody else.
Well, it will. It'll turn a spotlight here, Greta. And I think you're right about the pandemic. I mean, our Chief Justice of the Supreme Court here declared a judicial emergency, which effectively waived everyone's right to a speedy trial involuntarily. And I said very early on in the pandemic that I did not understand how this was constitutional, and that I expect that once these defendants are indicted, once they actually get into court, the first thing that all the lawyers will be doing is filing motions to dismiss based on Speedy Trial Act violations, because like you so well said, there is no pandemic exception in the Constitution.
Well, but even there lies the insanity. Like the last 2 years spent by this prosecutor getting an indictment. Look, I don't know if a crime is committed or not. We can have a trial. But meanwhile, almost the same charges are being brought by the special counsel in D.C. So, you know, you get your pound of flesh there. You make prosecutorial discretion. But all these people have been sitting in this jail waiting for trial while they do this high-profile thing. I mean, to me, it's like, you know, they're going to get their pound of flesh in Washington. And so why spend 2.5 years when you could be trying these other cases so that people who are innocent don't have to sit in this jail that they know about, that they've got pictures about? We got bug bites over dead people.
Well, prosecutors' job, Greta, is not to seek convictions. It is to seek justice. And that is very clearly the role of the public prosecutor. And I think she is derelict in her duty because she is not seeking justice here with President Trump and these other co-defendants, because, as you say, the special counsel is addressing those particular potential alleged crimes. It does not need to be brought in the state courts. It is being brought in the federal courts, as is appropriate when you're talking about federal officials implicating a federal election. But that has not stopped her, and she is tossing aside every murder defendant, every rape defendant, every child abuse defendant that is sitting downtown waiting for their trial in order to rush Donald Trump and these other 18 defendants before the judge in March. I guarantee you there are going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of defendants still waiting after the Trump trial begins.
Well, I give my right arm to be special counsel, investigate that jail fairly, I might say, and hold accountable. I'd go through the whole criminal code and see if there's any criminal action. And then when you talk about excessive force, I would go after every single person. If you talk about a RICO action, if you're sending people into doing that, that's an overt act. You know, I think in my mind, if you let people get hurt like that, which at least if you believe, you know, the Department of Justice, New York Times. But we'll see what happens. Francey Hakes, thank you.
Thanks, Greta.